On a climate survival toolkit, including minute crit. I think it's about.
Oh, sweet. Because I was like, where'd they go? I was like, hey, Rollins, you want to come see? Yeah, go for it. I love the fun. That's very important.
Yeah. Hey guys, feel free to come sit down. We're going to start in 2 minutes. Our event on a climate survival toolkit for children. It's grab your coffees and come sit down. Nothing like a cup of Morning Joe. There's nothing like a cup of Morning Joe and a really interesting talk. Yeah.
Morning that she got sick.
Oh,
I'm not
okay.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we can pull impromptu
No,
people
yeah.
from the audience.
All right, we'll get started now on our event for a climate survival toolkit. And to start us off, we have a video which was produced by UNICEF Australia and Royal Far West.
We're living through a climate crisis, and one of the most significant impacts of this crisis is the presence of more frequent and intense disasters across the country, whether that be floods, bushfires, or heat waves. I'm here on the south coast of New South Wales, in the midst of forest that's been ravaged by bushfires in the last month, and we're in for a long summer. One in which we will see many more of these bushfires, not just here in New South Wales, but around the country. Children are uniquely vulnerable and highly exposed to these impacts of climate change. The impacts are significant, whether they be health related from the inhalation of bushfire smog, whether they be the anxiety caused by repeated disruptions to daily lives from bushfire warnings or flood warnings, whether they be disrupted education from the damage caused by floods or bushfires. Children are at the forefront of the climate crisis.
So back in my remote...
Spoiler alert. Pause that video there. My name is Luke. I'm one of the UNICEF Australia Young Ambassadors for this year in the climate change focus group. So to start off, I'd just like to acknowledge that it's Youth Day, so it's really important that we use this as a day to elevate the voices of children and young people, and that's what we're aiming to do here today. We're going to go through a very interesting panel. So sadly, 2 of our panelists are caught in lines. Biggest day at COP so far. And go through the panelists and their experiences with climate change and some of the solutions we can use to tackle climate change. And also I'd like to acknowledge that in Australia and across the world, it's right to acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands which we come from, and how First Nations people and Indigenous people are disproportionately impacted by climate change. And it's so important to include their voices, and especially the voices of Indigenous young people in this conversation. So, we chose to call this a climate survival kit because the climate crisis is something that children and young people need to survive today and will need to survive into the future. It's addressing climate change. It's a matter of health. It's a matter of well-being, education, livelihoods, and even life or death for so many children. and we're at the front lines of climate change in so many ways. We found out today on the news that in Australia, school is being cancelled today because of a heat wave. On Saturday, tomorrow, it's going to be 41 degrees. And even more extreme than that, nearly half of all the world's children, that's 1 billion children, are at extremely high risk of the impacts of climate change. 2 billion children live with unsafe levels of air pollution, and it's the combination of all these events that makes it truly deadly. We've got diminished access to basic needs like food, water, and shelter. And especially recognising our Australian context, within the Asia-Pacific, children are being hit the hardest. In East Asia and the Pacific, we experience a 6 times increase in climate change disasters now than compared to our parents 20 years ago. And we all have personal experiences of the impacts of climate change. But that's enough yapping for me. I'd like now to pass over for our panellists to quickly introduce themselves, who they are, what they do, why they're here. You've all got mics.
I've got a mic, thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Georgia. I'm a Plan Youth activist this year. I'm coming from Gundungurra country, which is in southern regional New South Wales. And we're here talking about the impacts of climate change on the education of girls in the Asia Pacific. So that is why I'm at COP. Yeah, thank you.
All right, good morning, everyone. I know it's like really chilly outside, but thank you for making it here like at very early. So my name is Alia. I'm here representing the youth network of UNICEF Indonesia. I've been working on climate action since, I don't know, maybe I was like 14, 15 years old. And yeah, I'm here to advocating about climate education as well with youth and children engagement in climate action.
Yeah, thank you. And so before I begin our discussion with the panelists, we'll show you another short video, and this one's going to be about the impacts of climate-related bushfires and floods on children in Australia. It includes a clip of one of our other young ambassadors, Denzel, and we're going to look at what it looks like on the ground with reference we'll go to get into different solutions to that later.
So back in my remote community, we would often be affected from climate change and its terrible impacts. It's sort of left a devastating toll on the community, as we'd often see water truckings come in to refill our water tanks, as fresh water was a sacred resource in the community. We'd often have the lack of natural resources such as food be delivered to us, as floods were heavily affecting us. This left a devastating toll on the community, as we'd often have to rely on what's in the shops, as we'd be left out to major deliveries to smaller communities around the state, which left a massive issue for us in the remote community.
I woke up one morning at around 6 o'clock and Mum and Dad told me that there was a fire.
There was 400 homes lost, thousands of outbuildings, lots and lots of stock, huge amounts of wildlife impacted. I think that was our first experience as a family of being involved in a major disaster. The initial decision was for me to stay here and defend the property, and for the family to be able to pack up and go.
Very anxious and worried about Dad because he wasn't there with us. I was very anxious in general, just if the fire got into Burmese and hurt anyone or got rid of our house.
All right, yeah, so there you just heard from Denzel as well as Eddie and his dad about the impacts of climate-related bushfires on their lives and their communities. But now I'd like to throw to our panellists about, in their own contexts, what impacts they've experienced related to climate change. Any order?
Sure, I will begin. So I first want to acknowledge I'm from a regional rural community, and I'm really lucky in my community. A lot of people have been impacted far, far worse than me. So I think that's an important thing to raise. I'm from a community where I've seen people, their families devastated by droughts, followed by bushfires, followed by floods, followed by mice plagues, and again, we're looking like we're heading into another summer of deadly bushfires. And I don't think we can fully understand what that is like growing up and your life is a cycle of natural disaster, and it's a cycle of danger and despair and anxiety in your community. It's really, I don't know how to explain it to people. Like it is really just quite sad, and I really do feel for my peers who are living in this way, especially those who make their living on the land. They really do rely on the land for their livelihoods, and when the land is broken and torn up, there's nothing they can do. In my own personal experience, my town was in the middle of the northern and southern fires in 2021. And we knew that if my town caught on fire, it would create the biggest mega fire in Australian history. So we basically just sat around waiting for our school to burn down. We were getting calls from my dad. He'd filled up our garbage bins with water. And we were just waiting around to hear if my town would burn, basically. We were quite lucky in some ways, but the surrounding villages did burn. And there were a lot of homes lost, and a lot of young people were really affected by this. The other thing is, last year in 2022, my town had 4 1-in-100-year floods. My 80-year-old neighbour said she had never seen anything like this in her life, and she'd been living in the same house for 40 years. So I think that just speaks to the fact that it is a cycle. So many young people, especially in the regions, they know this all too well. They know other people affected by it. It's just unescapable, I think, in a lot of areas, especially in Australia, and I'm sure as we will hear in the rest of the Asia Pacific as well. So I think we're all just quite conscious as young people that worse could be coming at any stage. And I think that's what we're all worried about, yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think if we read the new report by UNICEF, they're reaching the tipping point. It says that children in the East Asia and Pacific region, they often experience multiple, often overlapping climate crisis. Especially in Indonesia, we have various different regions, and they also have various different challenges. So in Borneo, they have forest fires. In Nusa Tenggara, they focus with cyclone. As well for me, I experienced my school got flooded. I was kind of curious. Okay, what's going on? What's happening here? It was back when I was in high school. And then I read the news about flash flooding in my city. A lot of people losing their homes, their loved one, and it was very devastated. Also, a lot of people get impacted by that. They cannot go to school and everything. And I was like, okay, what is going on? What's wrong? And then that's the point when I started to learn about the climate change, how weather got affected, how the rains are getting worse every single year. And then after that, I moved to Jakarta. So Jakarta, as maybe a lot of you know, that is the first most polluted city in the world. So recently, we reached the point at the government telling us to, okay, everyone wear a mask, don't go outside, stay at home as you can, and also buying air purifier. And I was like, I cannot do that, that's expensive. And I was so confused, okay, what should I do? I cannot go to my university, stay at home, also dangerous. Till the point that I got sick. I was moved to Jakarta for about a week then, and then I got sick. My throat hurt, everything hurt. I was like, Mom, can I go back to my hometown? It was terrible. And then the government trying, to make regulation, and it getting down a little bit, but it's still the most polluted city in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Whilst I'm not a panelist, if I may add. It is becoming increasingly apparent that no child or no young person or no one at all is able to avoid the impacts of climate change. Even me, from a city, I recall sitting around a couple years ago in a local library where there were fires going on around in my suburb, near Sydney, right? So it's becoming increasingly apparent that climate change is global and is overlapping with lots of different other issues and increasingly impacting children and young people. But we're not all here for doom and gloom, luckily, because when we did at UNICEF, along with Monash University, a local conference of youth to prepare a national statement for children and young people, we found that young people were not, obviously there was elements of climate anxiety and such, but young people are increasingly hopeful about being able to bring solutions and halt the damage that's happening to our climate. So there were lots of different things that came out of that conference, focusing on a variety of areas, which are obviously very familiar around this COP, because they were based around those COP thematic elements. And I encourage you all to read it if you get a chance. It's online. But yeah, what we found is young people are thinking of solutions and just want to be heard when it comes to proposing those solutions. And so now we'll go into a second part of that video from UNICEF and Royal Far West to hear about some of the work they've done in preparing good practice resilience building work on the ground, including with reference to psychological support, which was funded by the Australian government. And then we can talk again to our panellists about what they've seen.
Climate change is here, and climate change is changing childhood. UNICEF Australia and Royal Far West have combined in a powerful partnership to ensure children and young people's needs are central to the way we're responding to these threats. Together, we're working to make sure children are at the centre of the way our governments are planning and responding to the threat of climate change, the way that they're preparing for natural disaster events, the support that they're providing to children and their families in the immediate moments of being affected by these disasters, and the plans that need to be in place to ensure the recovery support is clear, accessible and sustainable.
Our team and the UNICEF team went out on the road and actually spoke to families and did a lot of work around understanding where the greatest need was and where we should devote our services. And from there, we actually developed what's now known as the Community Recovery Program. How we work is with a multidisciplinary team that's made up of social workers, clinical psychologists, speech pathologists, occupational therapists, and they're supported by the team back here at Royal Far West Centre for Country Kids. No other service is offering the level of breadth but also depth of services, not only to children but all of the key adults around the children. So that will be their parents or caregivers, it will be their teacher, and in fact the whole school community, as well as even people in the local community that have also been impacted by this community-wide trauma.
So yeah, as you saw there is lots of good work going around building solutions to climate change. And now I'd like to open up to our panel to talk about what solutions they think are working for them, whether that's any policies, investments, actions. And these could be things that are actually happening, or you think should happen, or even things you've picked up along the way here at COP. You know, we've all been in such a space for capacity building and listening. Yeah, so what do you think about solutions?
So one of the things we have talked about this year in plans, so we launched our For Our Futures report this Monday, which details how the climate crisis is impacting the education of girls across the Asia Pacific. And one of the key things we said is it's not good enough that schools are not safe spaces for climate. It is really worrying that schools are really being hit first and worst. There's destruction to school property, and that means textbooks, supplies, student work stored there. And it means that if a school is at risk, children cannot go to school, just fundamentally. So one of the things we've talked about is better infrastructure codes for schools. We've had talks from one of our YAS, Angelina. Her school in Queensland is built on a floodplain. And we're saying we don't think that's good enough. We think schools need to be built with more resilience for climate. We think they need to be adaptable for the climate space, because education is so essential for young people, and we think that's one of the really important things. Another thing is we don't think that young people are being heard on this issue. And so we're asking for the establishment of a peak body on climate, especially for young girls, because we're saying that young girls are being hit first and worst by the climate crisis, which as is detailed in our report that came out on Monday. And we're saying that girls are leading the climate movement, and we're asking for governments, for NGOs, for other groups to listen to young people about what they think the solutions are. As was said, as UNICEF's pointed out, young people have solutions and they're ready to do things about this. So we're asking for young people to be heard and to be listened to and for their ideas to be implemented.
Yeah, I would think the same. Like, there are like couple things. My advocacy message is the first one is engage more children and young people in the decision-making process, especially because with the NDC and the loss and damage fund, like there are barely even mentioned children, and like even financing goes to children, which is a sad reality. And I think that it is really important for for the decision makers to know what is actually children need, like how they're vulnerable, like what can they do for the children. And by doing that, so the children also they have to be empowered, they have to be involved. So I think also going with climate education is really important to teach them like how important it is to know about climate change, like how they can do something about climate change. I know in Indonesia we don't have a curriculum for that yet. Also, like there's like very limited. They're teaching about climate change, but it's very limited. So I think that the grassroots community, they play the bigger role in this situation. As well with my youth-led organization, we starting to doing a lot of campaigns that engage with children, starting from the elementary school student, middle school to high school student. They learn about climate change in the local context. So what I said in the local context is they learn the impact of climate change that exactly like happen in their community. So one community they facing about flooding, the other one they face water scarcity. So they learn about the climate change in that context. So I think by educating them, they will have they will be empowered to, be in the decision-making process, because we do a lot of, advocating as well with like marching and protests to our local government, and we need more space for that. And the other thing that I feel important, because we're coming from the global south, is definitely the financing. It's kind of hard for us, especially we are from a youth-led organization. It's grassroots based. It's kind of hard to access funding. So yeah, I think that's going to be the solution.
I'd love to just quickly add to that, and also say that 100% climate education is so important, and we've seen that girls across Australia and the Asia Pacific are really asking for this. They're sitting there basically saying, hey, we really would like to do stuff. We're out on the streets, we're creating these movements, we're finding solutions, but we don't think we're prepared enough for our future careers, and we're really worried about the future. So better climate education is definitely something that young girls across the Asia Pacific are really worried about and asking for. So yeah, I'd really like to reiterate that as well. It's a great point.
Yeah, so again, it's so interesting when a great thing about COP is bringing together young people and that collaboration of ideas, because it's so interesting. We have so many similar ideas which came out across in our national statement, which obviously came out in Plan's education report. And of course, I encourage everyone to read our national statement and also the global statement prepared by Youngo. So we've listened to a few solutions from our panelists. We've seen the video, which had some solutions prepared by Royal Far West and UNICEF Australia. Now we'd like to get you guys involved in the solutions. Audience, don't look too shocked or scared. So on the walls on either side, there's sheets of paper and I assume pens on offer. Yes, Freya, our wonderful youth engagement manager, has pens. And what we'd like to do is get up, go to those sheets, and we can write down potential solutions which we have. Based through this new framework which UNICEF's prepared, it's the 4 Ps. So we've got protecting children and young people, preparing children and young people, obviously for climate change, prioritising children and young people in climate change, and preventing the impact of climate change and natural disasters on children and young people. So we're all going to hop up, and feel free to talk to the panelists or each other and everything, and get ideating.